are my sunlight. I got it. Okay, you can hear me okay now, right? Can everybody hear me? Doug, you can hear me? Calvin says, I like to get different perspectives on all arguments. I'm still entertaining for more. Entertaining for more. Okay, I read lips. Yes, everybody hears me fine. Can't hear. Someone said, can't hear you. Okay, yes. Okay, everybody hears me fine. What's up, y'all? Um, my name is Ramani Malco. I am the founder of the PEP, the People's Empowerment Platform. And I have promised my Patreon followers that I would go live on a weekly basis to have discussions about things that have actually brought about actual change in my life. I mean, I ain't no motivational speaker, nothing like that. I'm just a nigga that lived a lot of life. I lived a whole lot of life. I've been through a whole lot of shit. My upbringing was one of a kind. I've sat before multiple therapists, and they've all referred to me at some point or the other uh, as an anomaly. So, in all the therapy and all the different workshops and all the introspection I've exercised over the years, I've learned a few things, and I want to share those things with the people who are interested in hearing them and the people who believe they can benefit them. And listen, to me, I think that one of the biggest mistakes we make when we speak about becoming successful or finding fulfillment is that we tend to compartmentalize the shit. We compartmentalize everything, and what I mean by compartmentalize is that um, give me 1 second. I'm still actually putting shit together, but what I mean by compartmentalize is that people are like, okay, cool, I get it. Tell me how to make money. Okay, cool, I get it. But tell me how to get the girls. Okay, cool, I get it. But tell me how to be happy. And it's like the problem with that mentality or that perspective is that it's actually all interwoven. Like real success, and as you've gotten to see, a lot of people that we deemed successful, that we looked up to or may have thought had it all going on, you know, somehow found a way to sabotage themselves in what we seem to be this illustrious career. And quite often, those are that was a neglected aspect of their overall development that ended up manifesting in an inappropriate time. It could be anything from spousal abuse, drugs, drugs and addiction. It could be just simply being overly emotional in business settings. It could be so many different things. And so I try to talk about um, I try to talk about success and evolution and whatnot in ways that were actually very practical and actually helped me get out of my own way. Best way to put it. And so today I was going to talk about the detriments of comparison, and I actually have notes. I have notes based on clinical studies that I'm going to be pulling from my phone. So forgive me if you see me looking away too much. But anyway, not to drag this shit out. In a nutshell, man, you know, probably in particular, look, I'm 52 years old. I've been on the planet for more than half a century. I've learned a couple of things, but I've made a lot of mistakes too, especially in my younger years. And one of the mistakes that I made consistently was comparison. I had a very bad habit of looking at other people's accomplishments and saying, "Oh shit, I should be doing more," or looking at other people's accomplishments and being like, "Yo, oh, you know what? Before I get into that, let me just say this. So my whole point about sabotaging ourselves, remember how I was saying how you see people having these amazing careers, then they somehow find a way to self-sabotage. That's because, in my opinion, they haven't approached um, success from a holistic perspective. Success has to be approached from a holistic perspective, in my personal opinion. Long-term success. To achieve long-term success, there not only has to be growth in your pocketbook, but there has to be growth in your psychological and emotional development as well. And if there isn't, the absence of one will often put an extreme amount of strain on the other. So if you're lacking psychologically, if you're unresolved, you're emotionally unresolved, if you've endured a lot of trauma throughout your life and haven't really identified with that trauma yet, you're probably going to end up spending a whole lot of money trying to supplement this void that you can't seem to get a hold of. Or it's going to end up costing you a whole lot of money because of the fact that you are unable to control the demons that actually tend to arise in periods in which you get triggered. And then let's just say that you are doing a lot more psychological and physical and psychological work, or trying to do a lot more physical and psychological work, but you completely ignore the economic aspect of your being. What ends up happening is the physical and psychological work, you tend to you see those people who kind of overcompensate in that direction, almost begin to make excuses for their lack or inability to feed their family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that becomes actually more emotional strain and more unnecessary emotional strain from you. So, okay, that's what I wanted to clarify before I went any further. I see we got Marines. My man Eric is in the house. He's a Marine. Hoorah to you. I'm a Marine too. I see we got Trinidad in the house, Trinidad and Tobago in the house. I think the people are hearing me. Seems like we have a nice group of people listening in. That's cool. So I'll just keep moving forward. So I just want to make sure. People following me so far, can you let me know in the comments if you're following what I'm saying so far? If what I just shared with you is making sense, let a brother know. I listen in. Let me know. I try not hear you. Tell me. Is it making sense? Somebody talk to me. We got John Griffin in the house. We got Cat Bear in the house. Talk to me. Is it making sense? Okay. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service, my brother. Dwayne, can you just tell us when you're going to be live again, please? Sure. I tend to put like a 10-minute leader on, and what happened was I didn't notice, but in Puerto Rican culture, it's the man's job to plan the baby shower. I still think I'm being bullshitted, but if you're a Puerto Rican, would you please let me know if that's true? Because it was my job to plan the baby shower, which we had Saturday. And as a result of that, I'm a little bit behind on schedule. So I'm trying to make up for it now by doing a live early in the week and doing a live later in the week. Like people thank me for my service. Well, thank you. Well, thank my brother. Thank my brother as well. Where the Marine at? Where the Marine at? Let me get a hoorah in there if you a Marine. This is great. Thanks for sharing your experience. Absolutely, Tara. Thank you. Okay, so what was I getting at? So the first thing I wanted to say is that there's a huge challenge that we're facing now, and I might even be able to read it directly to you because I put my notes right here, but there's a huge challenge that we're facing now, and I know a lot of people kind of know this, but do we actually know the data? Do you actually know the information? Do you know the studies, the psychological studies that have been done to confirm and clarify what comparison is actually doing to you in the long term and how it might be inhibiting your overall progress? Listen, a lot of times people are looking to other people subconsciously and idolizing other people, and we're doing something according to this one study where we're doing something called upward comparison. And what upward comparison is that, and let me make sure I'm using the right term, but what upward comparison is when you tend to look at people who are doing better than you, or you perceive as doing better than you, whether they are making more money than you, or they have better social lives than you, or they have managed to create the perception of being very successful. And what we tend to do is we tend to look at the person on that tier and then compare ourselves to that person. And if you're someone who lives through your screen, if you're someone who spends a lot of time on your screen, on Instagram, social media, all through Facebook, whatever, or looking at TV and observing like the lifestyles of these wealthy people or well-off people or somewhat successful people, you subconsciously, we have a mechanism within us, we subconsciously begin to compare ourselves and idolize these people. The problem with that is, according to psychotherapist, what's her name? So here, let me just read it on social comparison. Social media and self-esteem revealed that some users were exposed to who were exposed to social comparison. They had a poorer state of self-esteem and gave themselves lower valuations. So her name's Delphine Blanc. She's a certified professional life coach and a hypnosis practitioner. And she was making the point that when we do upward social comparison, we not only subconsciously idolize people, but we actually begin to lessen the value of or appreciate ourselves and our outstanding points or our good qualities less and less. So for whatever reason that it is, identifying with someone else's success subconsciously lessens our interpretation of our own success, if that makes any sense. And so, because of the fact that most of us are living through uh, screens and observing well off people who kind of dominate the airwaves, we're constantly in the state of, of comparing ourselves to people who have been in the game much further or much longer than we have, who have had uh, financial breaks much bigger than the ones that we've had, who've had uh, 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 public successes that have gotten more notoriety than our own successes. And so, right out the gate, what that tells me is that that one comparison in itself is extremely unfair. And um, what I'll probably end up uh, uh, expounding on as I get towards the end of this live stream is that people look at me and they assume that I'm successful. People look at me and think, "Oh man, you got it going on, brother. Oh, you're such a kind spirit." The reality is that you don't know that. You really don't. I'm giving you the perception that I want you to have. I've often heard the saying that you don't see people. We often don't see people as they are. We see them. We don't see them through our eyes. We see them through their eyes. And so, with that being said, perhaps you're seeing me the way that I want or I tend to see myself, but not necessarily seeing me. And you're not there when I say something inappropriate or insensitive to my better half, and it takes me 2 days to realize that I owe her an apology. Or I realize that I owe her an apology, but I'm too stubborn and afraid of being vulnerable to just go and say I'm sorry. You don't see me in those moments where I might exercise or speak in a bitter way because I have come across an issue that I'm still yet to be resolved around. So if I'm being as transparent as I can with you right now, but that exact same thing applies to all the ballers and all the friggin' famous people that you see that are coming on and giving you the YouTube video, the Instagram pep talk, et cetera, et cetera. Um, you know, life is messy, but because of our orientation as people born and raised in the United States of America, we have a tendency to accept things shown to us on television as social norms. We adapt to those things subconsciously because we sit in front of a television in theta state, absorbing information in a state in which we're most vulnerable. And in theta state, we often will accept these things as truths subconsciously. And then we equate those things to what it means to be a happy family if that's what's being portrayed, or what it means to be a successful family if that's what's being portrayed. And then we impose those exact same practices and values on ourselves and the people around us. So that's one of the huge downfalls, according to psychiatrist Delphine Blanc, when it comes to social comparison. She also had something interesting to say, uh, that as you compare yourself to others, you begin to feel smaller and smaller. She claims that as this happens, we tend to change our perception of our job, our relationship, and our entire life, as our mind has a tendency to focus more on the negative. And that's true. If you've ever read the book, Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday, uh, that book cracks me up because it's basically talking about how you use negative headlines to trigger people into clicking, and how you use negative headlines into triggering actual news broadcasters to reporting things that aren't true. It's because our mind tends to gravitate to the negativity. And it's not because we're negative people. It's because we're survivors and we're making an attempt to identify the threat, identify the potential dangers. Look at everything going on right now with COVID-19. We're all extremely vulnerable. We hear about this vaccine coming out. We want to know everything that we can. How vulnerable are we? How susceptible are we to COVID-19 in itself? What type of environment are we supposed to be in, not supposed to be in? How accurate are these tests? All these questions continue to arise because, rightfully so, because we are trying to educate ourselves in the best ways possible. Well, some of us are, in the best ways possible to avoid the possibilities of us and our families being affected. Um, but the, the the downside of that trigger is that we tend to do it inward. We do it to ourselves as well. So what that means is that we tend to scan and evaluate ourselves, looking for the pitfalls, looking for the negativity, focusing on the things that we're not doing as well, because we're subconsciously programmed to believe, coming from a civilization that has thrived through survival of the fittest, we are also always trying to weed out our weaknesses. And so, in our psychological makeup, in which we try to weed out our weaknesses, we don't realize it, but that lack of patience, that lack of self understanding, we end up interpreting ourselves as less because of those weaknesses when we compare ourselves to others. So you've heard people say, "Oh, you can't compare your worst day to someone else's highlight reel." Well, that's kind of a good metaphor or a good analogy. Once again, we have to get to the point as people born and raised in the United States of America, we have to get to a point of understanding that a lot of what we are experiencing, a lot of what we are witnessing, a lot of what we've been conditioned to believe was not intended to benefit us as individuals, but actually intended to benefit civilization. I mean, intended to benefit big business and corporations at the expense of civilization. So I believe it was, I don't want to get all political, man, but I believe it was Nixon who put like 10 corporations in place, and those corporations were supposed to speak and represent the voice of the United States of America. That in itself was a huge shift in government, in which it was basically we were made openly aware that uh, big business would now speak on behalf of what was best for the American people. It was just an indirect way of saying that big business ultimately governs our country. And so it's the reason that the milk industry can go lobby at Capitol Hill and pay a certain amount of money and have commercials run rampant telling you how incredible milk is. It's the reason that uh, big business can lobby and have commercials out telling you how healthy cigarettes are. Um, it's because of the fact that ultimately we are the consumers that are quite easily programmed into believing into believing whatever is going to benefit big business. So my whole point to that analogy is part of the psychology of marketing is to, and that is used by these people and used by these organizations, is to convince you that you have a deficit. Most entities cannot sell you anything until they convince you that you have a deficit. And it's an old school formula called AIDA: attention, interest, desire, act. So they get your attention. Uh, and once they get your attention with a hurrah, they give you a pitch that makes you a little interested. And then they need to convince you to desire this thing. And the technique for getting you to desire this thing is believing that your life will be better off with it than without it. And lastly, act, which is the call to action. And so when we compare ourselves, what we're actually allowing to happen is that exact marketing formula of convincing ourselves that we have deficits because we don't measure up in this form of upward comparison. We don't measure up. We are subconsciously imposing the same style of programming on ourselves that we are being hit with all day, every day. Every time we pick up our phones, we scroll through social media. Every single time we put on the television, put on the radio. Hell, it's one of the reasons I believe that even though they do have advertising, it's one of the reasons that I believe that podcasts are perhaps the most profitable, provide the best return on investment when return on investment for advertisers. one, people who tend to listen to podcasts tend to have a higher live in a higher income and tax bracket, um, and also you don't get hit with as many of the toxic commercials as you listen to a podcast. You get to this long form content. You get to build a relationship with the host. Um, so anyway, I'm kind of I think I'm harping on that one a little bit too much. But there's another technique called downward social comparison, where people often uh, don't do, but often feel to benefit from when they look at someone who's doing worse off than them. But I have a very interesting study coming up about cancer patients that's going to contradict this whole thing. But downward social comparison is when you look down on someone and feel, and it helps you feel better about what you're achieving. But I had this revelation when I was going over this, and I was like, I know a lot of people who look down on people, but they aren't necessarily doing better than the people that they're looking down on. It really has absolutely nothing to do with the other when you really think about it. Quite often, people are scolding people, looking down on people, or thinking less of people. Um, but those people are actually doing better, may potentially be doing better than they are. But the overall theme that I'm trying to drive home here is that if you're gathering your information from a screen, from TV, radio, newspapers, etc., you don't know the truth. And so I would just suggest, in just knowing that bit of information, that you find ways to disconnect yourself from this uh, elusive food chain, this uh, unrealistic food chain, this uh, this upward social comparison that is subconsciously leading you to feel smaller and smaller about yourself. It is very important to be vigilant about who and what you allow in your timeline, vigilant about how you sit down and engage or consume entertainment and information, and knowing the difference between information and affirmation is very key as well. Because if you put yourself in a scenario consistently of um, comparison, you end up becoming addicted to it, which is another study that was really interesting. I don't have the doctor's name right here, but if I scroll down far enough, I might be able to find it. And listen to this. When you compare yourself to someone and you consistently make a habit of comparing yourself, it becomes habitual. It becomes a loop in your brain. So what ends up happening is, finally, you get a break and you start making it. And you start performing as well as the person you might have been comparing yourself to. What ends up happening is, because of your need to compare, upward social comparison, you then focus on the next person. And when you've gotten to that level, you then focus on the next person. And oddly enough, this ties into consumerism. It's that concept of keeping up with the Joneses. The problem with it is that it's like playing a game of football. You retrieve the ball, and every single time you get a first down, they move the goalpost. So every time you make a 10-yard gain, you move the goalpost on yourself. You make another 10-yard gain, you move the goalpost on yourself again. And I'll tell you something that I believe to be true. What's up, Aaron? Is that, a lot of us, a friend of mine had written a script, and in the script, it said something like this. It said, many of us live our 20s the way we wanted our teens to be. And we live our 30s the way we wanted our 20s to be. And we live our 40s the way we wanted our 30s to be, and so forth and so on. And being quite honest, it seems like as the generations go on, the generations are becoming more and more infantile, if you really peep it. I'm not saying they're more or less intelligent. I'm just saying more and more infantile, in that you're constantly hearing things like 60 is the new 40 and 40 is the new 30 and so forth and so on and so on. I don't know what problem people have with aging, but anyway, I wanted to make the point that this study was explaining that in this loop you end up consciously or subconsciously imposing so much unnecessary stress on yourself out of your need to compare, out of your need to be to put yourself in the position of feeling as though you are inadequate. Now, let's put all of this comparison shit to the side for a minute and talk about the other part of it. Most of us come from not so perfect upbringings. Most of us come from households and were raised in generations where shaming someone for a mistake or for a flaw or for a bad decision is commonplace. Most of us grew up in environments where we had primary caregivers who didn't necessarily understand child psychology in a way that benefited us. So we're coming from environments where making fun of other people, we're coming from environments where shaming other people, we're coming from environments where putting people down and shitting on people's dreams was kind of a way of life. And so these things have also created a major sense of inadequacy within a lot of us. Huge negative internal dialogue inside of a lot of us. Now, I'm not talking about, you walk around, right? You get your shit whipped, you snatched, and then you walk around talking about, I'm a king, I'm a queen, you know what I'm saying? I got my goal, I'm this. I'm not talking about that. When you hear me talk about the voice, it's the same voice I was talking about the last time I did a live stream. I'm talking about that quiet voice. The quiet voice that you hear when you're alone and no one's around, or that when you're just changing clothes in the morning, getting ready for work, when you're laying in bed, or when you just looked at your fucked up credit score, or just realized that you're going to be missing out on rent again, or you realize that you're living paycheck to paycheck, or you got turned down for your, for a job you applied for. That voice, that's a learned voice. That negative internal dialogue is a voice that we have actually adopted, and not necessarily the voice we would have chosen for ourselves. But the problem with that voice is that that voice, compounded with a world of marketing set up to convince you that you have a deficit, and without their product, you will not be whole, and compounded with the fact that you are constantly doing upward social comparison, that's a hard loop to get out of. It's extremely damaging. And it's how most of us live without even knowing it. We're in such economic bondage that we don't even realize that we have trauma to resolve. We haven't even gotten around to it yet. When I started doing the show, I don't know how many of you have seen the show A Million Little Things, but when I started doing the show A Million Little Things and wanted to really learn about depression so that I could really play Rome effectively, we would talk with psychologists and doctors, and something that a psychologist said to me, a black psychologist said to me, which I had never crossed my mind, was that a black man's interpretation of happiness in America is very different from a white man's interpretation of happiness in America. And you can really pretty much apply that anywhere. According to where you are in your life, your value system, the things that are most important to you, the things you put above all else are going to change. We don't know this, but we have a lot of third world pockets throughout the United States of America, a lot of them. And then we denounce the people in those communities for the crime. We denounce them for the violence, not realizing when you're living in environments where there is such a lack of resources and opportunity is scarce, you're going to resort to different things to feed your family, as opposed to the person who is perhaps working at a Fortune 500 company, or working at a corporation that's doing big layoffs. This person getting laid off versus this person uh, being in a compromised circumstance of not being employed. Living in a third world pocket, you respond to that differently than you would uh, uh, living in the corporate world. And so the same thing applies for black men in America versus white men in America, is that what we interpret as happiness and what we interpret as an ideal existence is very different from what a Caucasian male would. And so you have to factor that in as well, is that sometimes we are so inundated with the basic necessities. We're so inundated with, not inundated, we're so obsessed, not obsessed, that's the wrong word. I'm not the best speaker. We are so preoccupied with the basic needs of necessity, the basic necessities for life, the basic necessities for life, that we don't even get around to addressing the fact that perhaps the love that we experienced from our primary caregivers was inadequate, dysfunctional, damaging, traumatic. We don't, what's that? I've said that shit to brothers and they was like, who this nigga? What was that? Was that, what group was that? No, I'm talking about your life. And so we end up living in an extremely risk-averse state throughout our entire life. And if I can tell you one thing, I ain't the wisest brother on the planet. I am definitely not the most educated brother on the planet. But I can tell you one thing. I look at myself today. I do consider myself successful. It took a long time for me to embrace that. But I can tell you, there is no measure of success I have ever achieved without taking risks. Not one. But when you grow up in certain environments, you become extremely risk averse. And that means that even a deviation from the norm is interpreted as a loss. You might stay in the same economic bracket. You might stay in the same, it might require the same amount of time, but simply because of the fact that it is a deviation from what you are accustomed to based on your peer group and the system in which you were raised, that can be interpreted as a loss. And so you play it even safer, extremely resistant to change. Now, take all of those things into consideration. The fact that we are raised differently, the fact that everyone has a different starting line, the fact that we potentially had our primary caregivers, the psychological approach that our primary caregivers used to deal with us may have been counterproductive. The fact that we are constantly being inundated with advertisement that we interpret as entertainment. We interpret it as entertainment. But here's the analogy that I always use. I probably use it in every live stream. But you're watching television, and there's your happy family, and they're all sitting down for breakfast before the kids go to school, and they're all eating cereal, Frosted Flakes, whatever the hell. I don't know. I don't want to name a cereal, but anyway. And they seem like it's a great sitcom. They get up, they all leave, bye mom, kiss mom goodbye. They all walk out of the house. You're vegging out in front of a television watching that. That's what you equate to a happy family. You try to subconsciously recreate that scenario for your family. You know what's interesting? You go out and buy cereal. The thing is, that cereal that you're feeding to your child because you want to you it's symbolic of a happy family. It's probably going to give him fatty liver, eventually lead to leaky gut. And he's going to get that big old tuft of fat right around here. That's going to start making him look like an old man by the time he's 14, 15. That's what that shit is, yo. That's what it is. So factor in your subconscious programming that's coming because you're constantly being sold to from every single angle. Factor in your own trauma that is yet to even be resolved. Factor in upward social comparison, which is just a human need for survival. Keeping up with the Joneses, peer pressure. How do you survive? And we choose it for ourselves. We choose it for ourselves. That's what we do on social media. We choose it for ourselves. It seems entertaining. We think that we're convincing ourselves that we're motivating ourselves, when in fact, no, actually we're not motivating ourselves. We're actually chipping away at our self-esteem. Here, I've got a little bit of data right here that I can share with you about that. Um, people saw. So check this out. Became. So check this out. Listen to this shit, okay? Um, so, uh, low self-esteem is just one byproduct. There's another study called the Dark Side of Social Comparison study by a woman named Dr. White. It was Dr. White, and her team revealed that low self-esteem could lead to neuroticism. Neuroticism is among the big 5 high-order personality traits. Neurotic people respond extremely to stressors. Worse, they are more than likely to interpret ordinary and non-threatening situations, such as minor frustrations, as hopelessly difficult. Other symptoms include self-consciousness, shyness, and trouble controlling urges, and also delaying gratification. Think about that shit. We're talking about, because of the fact that we allow ourselves to get caught up in that loop, we subconsciously become somewhat neurotic. And as a result of that, we interpret small problems as enormous problems and behave accordingly. But we also feed ourselves different foods because we're constantly trying to supplement the discomfort that we're feeling from the stress and anxiety. Not to mention, all the stress hormones that are being released into our bodies are completely compromising the way in which we think, it's compromising the way in which we move, and it's also stripping away at our overall self-esteem, our overall physical health, because when your body kicks into that flight mode, your digestive system and everything shuts down so that the rest of you can function at its optimum for a quick, burst of time. Like they say, like you're running from a bear. But the thing is, there's no bear. There's no bear. You're simply running, whether you know it or not, you're simply running from a cycle of self-deprecation that you've created. And so, to not drag this thing out too much, I just wanted to talk about that. There's a lot of people who are always like, yo, man, I got to lose some weight. And I got to do this and I got to do that. And then they go out there and they do some trendy diet. They lose the weight, look good, take some pictures, put that shit on Instagram. And then you start looking at the Instagram pictures that come afterwards. You're like, damn, they gained that weight back. They gained that weight back quick. They got that shit back real quick. Yeah. And that's because the psychological aspects of the diet were neglected, as we discussed at the very beginning of this live stream. And so my whole point to this conversation about comparison is that we need to start taking conscious steps to get ourselves out of that loop and to give ourselves more realistic models to gauge from. And so what that means is, 1, not needing to compare. 2, instead of going off of the shit that we're getting from these videos and all these TV shows and all that, actually get real mentors that actually come from your damn community. Actually get involved in the people that are doing the things that you aspire to. Get involved with them. I don't know if you guys know about Tijuana Jackson, but I got a movie out right now. It's called Tijuana Jackson, Purpose of a Prison. A lot of y'all know the character because I've been doing it for 10 years online. But one of the things that we talk about with Tijuana Jackson is that TJ has a formula for becoming successful. And the formula is, let me tell you the quote that he has. He says, most of us, we seek feedback from the homie that's going to feed our ego rather than getting feedback from the professional that's going to go deep like emo and help a nigga feed folks. The point that he's making is that a lot of us go out there seeking affirmation. We go to the people that we know we're going to somewhat fall in line with our way of thinking, when what we actually need to do is make a habit of going towards and seeking out the people who are going to challenge what we think. And simply by being challenged, whether the person that's challenging you is right or wrong, simply by being challenged, you now have an even better understanding of whatever it is you're trying to communicate or trying to put or trying to execute. And so my point to this is that what TJ tends to say is that if you want to trade real estate, right? Okay, what kind of real estate? Commercial property, multifamily homes, single family units? Do you want to do big apartment buildings, small apartment buildings, fourplexes? You want to wholesale? And then he says, now I want you to go find 3 experts in that specific type of real estate dealing. You want to do single family homes? Find 3 experts that do single family homes. Read 2 books on real estate in single family homes. And the reason he says this is because specificity is how it gives you quicker access to the details that actually distinguish good from great or success from failure. And so forgive me if this seems a little bit long-winded, but it all ties in. And so what I'm saying is that we're relying, it's laziness. We look at people on TV and we look at people in these videos all day and on Instagram and Facebook and all this all day. And we go, oh, I'm getting mentorship. I'm getting good insight. I'm getting good advice from this. And that's cool. But man, if they can't put their hand on your shoulder, if they can't go like this to you and go, bruh, or queen, let me holler at you for a second. If they can't do that, you got to ask yourself, what are they selling? Why are they exerting so much energy? Why are they putting so much time? You know how much time it takes to put together these videos? What's for sale? And if something's for sale, you're probably not getting the most accurate assessment of what it takes to achieve whatever it is you are listening to them for in the first place. Just trying to detonate the comparison and trying to highlight what comparison looks like. You understand? And don't get me wrong, there are people out there who have genuine intentions, and just because someone's selling something doesn't mean that, that it's bad for you. I've bought courses, quality courses, that have actually changed the game for me. By the way, if you're listening to this video, hit a like button, give a brother some, holler at a brother, say some shit. And I ain't even using my I got tricky little things that I had put together for y'all so that I could show you my name and shit. If you want to follow me at the PEP and get notifications of stuff like this right away, you can go to peprequest.com, or you can just download it in the Google Play or App Store. It's called PEP Pager Lite. That is PEP Pager Lite. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And oops, shit, I got a little too fancy, hit the wrong button. But anyway, so moving right along, that's one example of what I'm trying to communicate to you, is that it is extremely important. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing. Is understanding that these styles of that the people that we're often looking to for advice and looking and accessing through these screens aren't necessarily the most accurate resources for, or the most qualified resources for what it is we're looking to do. So I want to get that out of the way, and then I just want to throw one other thing out there, and then I'll close this up. They did a study where they took cancer patients, and they took the cancer patients deliberately to show them people who were doing better than them in their recovery. And when they saw those people, they got really depressed. They were like, shit, does this mean I'm dying? Oh my, the results of it all was just more internal dialogue, which would lead to more issues with their ailments. And then they said, okay, well, let's take those people and let's show them to people who were doing worse off than them. And then you know what they began to focus on once they saw people who were doing worse off than them? Their own doom. They're going, oh God, that's where I'm headed. So it was as if, as we discussed earlier, the need to focus on the negative is a human trait. And so what I'm trying to communicate or articulate here is the importance of you and I and everyone like us to make a conscious effort to intentionally focus on more positive things, intentionally choose resources and mentors and books, podcasts, etc., that somewhat safeguard us from the marketing scheme of needing us to believe we have a deficit. And lastly, I think it's extremely important for us to understand that we, most of us, or a lot of us, in fact, and I can even go, let's just go really extreme. About a third of us have experienced some level of molestation in our life. 50% of us have experienced some level of abuse in our life. And a considerable portion of us have experienced ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. All of these things, because of the psychological toll that they take, all of these things, some through the way in which they affect us as we evolve, lend to more physical disease and ailment. I don't know if people are aware of that. And so there's a great study by Dr. Maxine. I can't think of her name right now, but I'll bring the study up. But so I think it's very important for us to now start making more deliberate and conscious choices, conscious and aware choices of where we focus our attention, who we allow to have our attention. It doesn't mean that we shut everything off. It just means that we have to understand that we are products of we have been indoctrinated by a belief system that is intended to benefit big business at the expense of civilization. And so we have to be a lot more intentional about how we get our information and how we go about pursuing the things that we want and how in which we gauge our success. And the whole point of this thing is that comparison. I understand that we sometimes compare to get a gauge of where we need to be and where we need to be, but because of the world that we live in, and because of a lot of us have not gotten to the point of having a really clear identity of self, we're quite vulnerable and susceptible to the trap of upward social comparison. And I'm just wanting you all to know that it is important to be aware. That's it. That's really all I have time to say, really, is to be aware. And so I have a few little notes on, what we can do about it. And I will just rattle them off because I know folks want to go. I know folks ain't trying to be here all night. Listen. Hold up. Bear with me. I'm moving slow. I'll get there. Oh, damn it, it's taking too long. Okay, here we go. Now, listen. I can't find the damn notes. It's too much. I got too many notes. It's just too much. Anyway, some of the things that we can do is one. I know that one of them was to be more conscious of the outlets through which we choose information. Be careful of being able to distinguish information from affirmation is extremely important. Also understanding that if you're seeing it on television, if you're or if there are advertisements running, or even if it's a somewhat of a production, understand that it's up and running because there is something for sale. Even me sitting here right now, the first question that should be coming to your mind is, what is he trying to sell me? And don't allow me to believe that you have, don't allow me to lead you to believing that you have a deficit. And honest to God, that's not my intention. This is kind of my give back because of the fact that, I'm pretty preoccupied with my employment as a director, as an actor, and I don't get to be out in them streets like I used to when I was younger. And so this and Tijuana Jackson, life coach with a goon hand, has been my form of give back ever since. And I have people who contribute to me on Patreon, which is a form of sales, which is a form of selling. But they contribute to me on Patreon to do exactly what I'm doing right now. But anyway, I'm sorry that I had to cut this so short. I hope it was beneficial. We're coming right up on an hour. We're at 59 minutes and 36 seconds. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can shoot them through, and I'll do my best to answer them before I shut this baby down. And please hit the like button wherever you're watching. And and listen, compare and despair is something I try to pay attention to not doing, which supports you to keep giving back. And that, you're right. Yeah. My Patreon supports me to help giving back. 'Cause, takes a lot of time to put videos together and stuff like that. What does AIDA mean again? You can look it up. It means attention, interest, desire, action. So it's get the person's attention, get their interest, create a desire, and get them to act, which is to buy now. Did Phoenix, did you get that? Who's it? Comparison only hurts you if you're not realistic. Well, this is what I'm trying to explain to you. The person who made the comment about being realistic, this is what I'm trying to explain is that because of our indoctrination, because of our orientation into life in the United States of America, our concept, our belief of what is realistic is actually quite harmful. It's one of the reasons that immigrants have a higher chance of succeeding in the United States than we do, is because their orientation is quite different and, to be quite frank, much more grounded in reality. We have our own senses of entitlement. We have our own belief systems of what it takes to be successful or to achieve a certain economic status or to sustain marriage, where people come from different countries and don't have the same things. We also have this expectation of what we believe our government is supposed to do. A lot of people coming from places where their government is either morally or economically bankrupt or both, and they don't have the same reliance on government. So some of us, or a lot of us, are operating from a place of what it's supposed to be. And so because things aren't what they're supposed to be, we feel extremely disappointed. Then you have people out there who are operating from a place of this is what it is. Whether it's supposed to be or not is irrelevant. This is what it is, and this is what I'm working with or working against or working to surpass or overcome, which I believe is a healthier perspective. And the key out there is to understand that, is to come to the realization that our perceptions of reality are skewed because of the trauma in which we were raised. I'll just give you a prime example, because this is what I have a character. If you don't know, I have a movie out right now. It's called Tijuana Jackson, Purpose Over Prison. And it's about a guy who gets out of prison and he's so institutionalized. And the funny thing is he's actually trying to teach you how to liberate yourself, yet he's the most institutionalized person in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And so this institutionalized individual is actually preaching what he most needs to learn. But you see him getting in his way throughout life. It's because the trauma that he's experienced from being in prison and being raised in a dysfunctional family, he has a different reality. He has a different philosophy that isn't necessarily honoring him as he's trying to become a successful member of society on the outside. Now, his philosophy may be better for living on the inside. And each one of us have our own mental prison from which we came. And it can often be a skewed reality of what's supposed to be and what we interpret as real. And because of that, we may be a bit off target and not even know it, and constantly find ourselves running into these hurdles or running into these obstacles. And that is the whole point of this thing about comparison, upward social comparison, is that we have to get to a point of being comfortable identifying with our trauma so that we have a clearer sense of self and we are better able to distinguish our wants from our needs. That being said, what you may say is reality may be reality for you to a degree and for everybody to a degree, but not necessarily accurate or appropriate for what it is you are aspiring to. And that's why I keep stressing we have to be a lot more conscious of where we focus our intention and attention on a minute-to-minute basis. And also just being able to identify where these things are coming from. So are we good now? Someone else had a question. He said, oh, by the way, if you want, subscribe to my YouTube channel, because there is a YouTube channel there. See, look, I'm selling right now. Someone says, a woman named Elizabeth says, I love these kinds of movies. Do you know where I can find it? Yeah, Elizabeth, you can go to TijuanaJackson.com if you want to check out that movie. It's called Tijuana Jackson, Purpose Over Prison. Just go to Tijuana, like the city, TijuanaJackson.com. Or you can find it on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, It's a dark comedy. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna end this. By the way, my name's Romney Malco. If you want an invite to the PEP, go to peprequest.com. I'm going to end this whole thing with a scene from my movie Tijuana Jackson, Purpose Over Prison. I thank y'all very much for giving a brother a shot today. I hope you enjoyed everything. I hope that it was all worthwhile. I hope that you hit the like button. I hope that you shared the hell out of this video. Wise words for the soul. Thank you, Star. Thank you, Elizabeth. And what else is there to discuss? I think that's it. My name's Romney Malco, and I am the founder of the PEP, the People's Empowerment Platform. If you're wondering what the PEP is, it's just an app. Tamika says, I was blessed. She says, this was a blessing to hear. Even now, I let others' opinions and their successes drive my decisions on what my life is supposed to be or how I should go about living my life. I thank you for clarifying this, because now I know where to focus. Yes, Tamika. Yes, 100%. I live for that. That right there, that's my cha-ching. That right there is the cha-ching for me. Y'all be surprised how much time I spend just reading that shit. But I think I told you this in my last live. When they looked at all these kids that came from really adverse upbringings and underserved communities, there's always these anomalies, these kids that succeed. And the common denominator between all the kids that succeed was there were four things, but one of those four things was a non-parental, caring adult, a mentor, a freaking mentor. And I'm telling you, if you want the truth about, here's the problem. Here's the problem with going out and actually seeking a real mentor or speaking to someone in your community about something you're trying to aspire to. The minute you make eye contact with someone who can put their hands on your shoulder, now don't get me wrong, they might be wearing a mask, but the minute you can stand 6 feet away from a brother and be like, and he can look you in your eye and tell you what you're doing wrong, you become a lot more vulnerable and accountability is heightened. A lot of us don't know it, but we're struggling with vulnerability. And our fear of being wrong or being interpreted as a failure is inhibiting us from actually pursuing anything of value, any real success. We're afraid of vulnerability. We're afraid of the accountability. We got time for the mundane bullshit that we grow to deplore, but we don't have time to take risks, seek out mentors, and be told the truth about our shortcomings. We'd rather self-diagnose through upward social comparison. And you know what? It's killing us. Literally and figuratively killing us. So, that's the end of that. I'm going to leave it alone. My name's Romney Malco. This concludes another episode of Advice from a Jackass. And y'all have a good one. And here's a scene from a movie, Tijuana Jackson, Purpose Over Prison. What up, Lil Larry?
Nothing.
Yo, this your gal?
Darlene, this is my Uncle TJ.
Hi.
She ain't white, she light-skinned, boy.
I'm half white.
Now with all them yams on your plate.
You celebrating with us, Junior?
Y'all made greens?
Watch your mouth, boy.
Copy that, what we celebrating?
Didn't you just get a job?
Too bad it's in Orlando.
What?
You sure?
Orlando?
Yeah, Mama, he's trying to sneak down to Orlando to be a Toastmaster. I guess he's too good for us now.
If you don't want to be on camera, all you got to do is shut your mouth. Mom, you heard a curse, right?
Orlando, Junior? You know my arthritis is acting
Mama,
up.
you gonna let her
what
curse like that?
What am I supposed to do?
You gonna let her curse like that in front of the company? How come every time I say a bad
But
word?
you the eldest, Junior, and you should know better.
I'm saying in front of the
Watch your
camera.
mouth, Junior.
Why she get the curse and I don't?
You heard of Dick Gregory because you old as hell.
Oh, but porcupine crawl up in your mouth while you sleeping.
You ain't going to Orlando, Junior.
Mama, you want the house with the pool? This time I'm gonna get the house with the pool for you. You want me to get a job? This is a legitimate job. Junior, why don't you date Cheryl? Junior, why don't you pick up Lil Larry from school? Junior, why don't you go pick up my meds? What do y'all do when I'm not here? I'm gonna tell you what they do. They do just fine. See, that's a rhetorical question. This ain't about me going away. This is about me growing away. They scared of that change. They can't mess with that transformation. Y'all ain't never made this big a deal of me going to jail.
You chose jail.
Yeah, I'm choosing this now, which is why I got selected for the Toastmasters reality show, and somebody with stretch marks did not.
That's enough, Junior.
I'm not talking about your stretch marks, Mama. I'm talking about Sharia. They ain't had no time for when he was in the joint. Now I'm outside. They gonna try to tell me what I could do.
You know I can't write no letters with this arthritis. I can't even get on the computer.
So you couldn't just make a call, Mama? You can't shoot me a kite. Not one. You know if Sharia was in jail, you know what you...
Don't put my name in your mouth, TJ. Stall me out, all right? Because you don't know what Mama would do.
You want me to pay a $10 deposit fee and a $3 flat fee just to put money on your phone just so I can call you? That's $13 for 15 minutes, Junior. And the only thing I can hear is your misery in the absence of the Holy Ghost in the background.